Alright, so I'm reconditioning a hardware store Hatchet here. I've already started doing some of the file work. Basically what this involves is removing the entire shoulder that the Hatchet originally came with and prevented it from cutting well. I'm going to make sort of a compound convex to it, so it's going to wedge down this way and then down this way. I'm going to make the thinnest point on the edge right behind the heel here, and it's going to get gradually thicker at the toe. The actual cutting edge is going to stay the same at about 30 degrees aside. Now the reason I already started this, it takes a good 20 minutes maybe aside with a good size file to correct these from the factory. It can take less, but usually these are pretty bad. I mean, you can see how raw the casting is based on where this is progressing. But I'm pretty much there. Just got to straighten up a little bit. And this is just a loop running through the workbench. I'm going to stand on it with my foot, and I got a pin bracing the handle here. Got a big wooden dowel, so if the file skates or something, this is what's going to hit the edge and not my hand. The other precaution I took was to strip all the paint off in the area where I'm going to be filing so it doesn't clog the file up. And I am going to use the file to shape the rough form the convex edge that it will have. Again, it needs to be thinned out everywhere, but I'm concentrating my efforts on the middle and on the heel. So that's pretty good. And in all reality, if you're going to do a bunch of heavy work with it, or if you weren't a real stickler, the file ground edge is going to be pretty good for 80% of everything you do with it. This side had a pronounced hump right in the middle, and that's really been what I've been working on here. If the file really starts to get choked up, you can use a wire brush, or they make a special carding tool for getting rid of it. And just like the other side, I'm going to rough form the convex with the file. Every time I can feel the file start to skate a little bit, I know it's getting choked up. switched to one of the older washboards. With a little bit of oil on this paper. Sometimes with the heavier grit I will use a little bit of oil instead of stopping to erase it all the time. It does the same thing. I find that it swells the paper a tiny bit and makes it difficult to get as crisp an edge as you might like. But on a tool that's going to be convex and it's softer metal and I've got to remove a bunch of steel, there's no point in stopping to erase it every 30 seconds. I can feel a burr and it's already smoothed out most of the hatching caused by the file. A little more work to it. This is all just cosmetic. I know I'm getting to the edge because I've just raised a burr on both sides. So now its geometry is far improved. This is a real tool at this point. As opposed to just splitting wood, it should be able to harvest a decent amount of firewood, backpack and whatnot. And it should still have enough steel behind it to hold up to some, hitting the odd knot and whatnot. It's a hatchet, not a felling axe, so the forces on it should be a little bit less. You still don't want to remove too much steel. Now my final angle is probably going to be somewhere around 30 degrees. I can see that it's loading up. And again, because it's a low Rockwell steel, went right from the 120 grit to the 800 grit. If the file was probably good enough and the 120 was almost certainly good enough, the 800 grit is plenty good for most jobs. For backpacking as opposed to yard work, I tend to take them up to a slightly higher polish because it just means a whole lot less effort down the road. The highest polish you can practically take it and maintain it at will pay real dividends when it comes time to using it, in terms of ease and how size of lumber you can realistically tackle. I'm just going to polish up the back a little bit. This is really cosmetic for the most part. I can feel I'm just getting the edge. This geometry is still pretty aggressive. I mean, it may be 30 degrees and it may not be as thick as it was behind the cutting edge, but it's still pretty thick. Things like paper cut tests tend not to be very dramatic. Even while it will still, shave arm here and whatnot. So in the future, unless it winds up getting rusty, about the most I would ever need to do to this is paper with compound on a washboard, 2 sheets of paper. These do tend to get dinged and stuff, but you could go with, if you're careful, you can go a long time without having to put it back on any abrasive tougher than compound on paper. So now, for a hardware store hatchet, this guy has turned out pretty good. And it's still going to be surprisingly robust in use, easy to maintain, and it is light years away from where it started in terms of performance. This guy could tackle logs, 5-6 inches across, whereas before it would literally bounce off of just about anything unless you were splitting with it, or digging roots. So now it's a genuine backpacking tool, and it didn't cost any more than the war club that it started out as. Alright, well, thanks for watching.